Hello guys and welcome to episode 77 of the Beat Your Backlog Podcast, a podcast discussing the things gamers like to put off, get to another day, and oh yes, will definitely beat later their backlog. I'm your host Adam and today we are diving into the breach of hell once more in Supergiant's Greek epic game Hades 2. And after a lengthy early access period, the game released on the Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2 and Steam on September 25th. Its release brought about a mass of critical acclaim, with the Switch 2 version currently sitting at an incredible 94 on Metacritic, and the game was recently named IGN's best ever roguelike, which I think is quite controversial, in a recent video that they made. And my history of Hades, well, Hades 1 is one of my favourite games ever. Probably my second favourite game ever after Breath of the Wild, actually. I devoured it when its 1.0 release happened on the Nintendo Switch back in 2020. And I'd always been a fan of roguelikes, but I'd never experienced one like Hades. The dynamic storytelling, beautiful art, and unbelievable music made it a complete package for me, resulting in me giving it a 10 out of 10 in my review. The announcement of Hades 2 was a bit of a surprise for me. Supergiant's track record was always making a new game or new IP, but I suppose that the success of the first game meant it would be silly not making a sequel and kind of cashing in on the huge success that they had with the first game. However, in what seems to be the new Supergiant style, they decided to release Hades 2 again in early access like the original one, and have been tweaking the mechanics and slowly adding new layers to the story over the last couple of years. Much like the first game, I decided not to play Hades 2 when it released in early access. I wanted to go in the 1.0 version completely blind, and did exactly that when it released on the Nintendo Switch at the end of September. So will Hades 2 live up to the hype of the first game? Can you improve on a game that I already consider perfect? Let's find out in this week's episode of the Beat Your Backlog Podcast. But before we get into the episode, I would like to remind you that you can support the episode and support the podcast on Patreon. If you do, you'll gain access to all of my content 24 hours early. That includes reviews, any articles I write, and any episodes I post. And you will also unlock the Beat Your Backlog bonus vault, which will be filled up with exclusive podcast episodes only for Patreon supporters. The most recent episode should have gone up just before this video, and it is about my 10 desert island games that I would take on a desert island with me specifically on the Nintendo Switch 2. So if that sounds interesting, do go over to Patreon and support at the $2 or $5 tier. You can do that by going to the link in the description. And as always, thank you so much to the Patreons or patrons that already support on Patreon. I appreciate it greatly. And the first thing I've really found very interesting about Hades 2 was its story. I personally love Greek mythology, and I like how Supergiant took the myths of Homer and the other Greek poets and added their own twist to it, making a little-known god called Zagreus in the first game their main character. So then what would they do for the second? And, well, in it you play as a character called Melinoe, or we'll call her Mel, because it's a bit easier to say. She is a secret daughter of Hades and Persephone that was given to the Titaness Hecate as a baby. Hecate is tasked with raising the baby as a witch and sorceress, with Mel's destiny being that of a weapon, trained and drilled to kill the most infamous titan in Greek mythology, Kronos. And actually, when they first announced this game, I was a bit against the new setting. I was like, okay, why aren't we continuing with Zagreus or that Hades, kind of like the character Hades setting? I thought this was a little bit out of left field, that you're now a witch, and also like if you look at the game, the color palette is very, very different to the original game. Like the original was very like sort of orangey red colored. This is way more purple and green. If you're watching the video, I'm putting some gameplay on the screen for you. And I was kind of a bit like, I'm not really interested in this character. I didn't realize actually that she was the sister of Zagreus. Like, it's a little bit vague at the start of the game as well when you first go in, because you go in and there's like a painting of Hades, Persephone, Zagreus, and Persephone's holding this baby. And I was like, okay, so is she the daughter of Zagreus and Persephone? I was like, isn't that a bit too sort of Greek mythology, like on the nose, that like he had the daughter of his mother? Like, that's weird. But no, apparently Hades and Persephone, who are Zagreus' mum and dad, also had a daughter called Melinoe. And the Titan of Time has re-emerged and seeks vengeance on his 6 children who beat him in an ancient war, cut him up into little pieces, and buried him in the deepest depths of hell. And Kronos' attack on the gods has taken him by surprise. He has managed to capture the House of Hades, so what was your home base in the original game, and is currently laying siege to Mount Olympus itself. Therefore, with the help of the great explorer Odysseus, Mel needs to take the long way around to reach Tartarus, going through the lesser-known domains of Erebus, Oceanus, and the Wandering Fields to destroy the Titan in her father's house. And since the game is a roguelike, however, beating Kronos once will not be enough to destroy him forever. Melaniwin therefore needs to hone her skills to keep making her way to the bottom of Tartarus and the top of Mount Olympus to save her family and restore the gods to their rightful seats on Olympus. And I think I actually like the story more. After saying all of that about, like, I wasn't really sure about Melaniwe and like this witch aspect, I think I like the story more in Hades 2 than the original game. Hades' original story, the original game, story always felt a little bit small and compact. It was actually quite a small story, and it was always led with a bit of like emo teenage angst, where Zagreus was like basically just rebelling against his father because he wanted to meet his mother, and that's more or less all the game was about, was that like he had to keep fighting against his father who was pushing back against him, and until you basically beat the game. This game feels like more, or the story in this game I should say, it feels more like a Greek myth. Like, it feels huge, like it's involving all of the gods. They are, the gods are basically besieged on Olympus. You have this great new antagonist, Kronos, who is bigger than like life itself. He's sort of the grandfather of all of these gods. He's almost like omnipresent, omnipotent, because he can stop time, and that's what he's done with the characters from the first game. They're all basically locked in time somewhere, which I don't want to spoil too much, but yeah, it's kind of like a cool aspect. And then you have Mel, who starts off as this very kind of straight, like teacher's pet character, and her basically life's purpose is to kill Kronos. And it's kind of cool as you play the game to see how Mel sort of develops, and also Kronos' role develops as he realizes, okay, she might actually be stronger than she looks, and she also realizes, like, I'm actually stronger than it looks, and that this sort of goal that I've given myself for my entire life, it might actually come to pass, which is really, really interesting. And I think it's cool. It's like I said, it feels way bigger. It feels way more impactful. Like, basically, if you don't succeed, then that's the end of the gods, more or less, and the rule of the Titans will take back over. So it is a much bigger, more impactful, more important story, in my opinion. And also I think that also plays into the side characters, because I think the characters spread around your new home base. So like I said, the House of Hades has been taken over by Kronos. You now have your base in a place called the Crossroads, which, if you're watching the video, you can see right now. That's convenient. I didn't do that on purpose. And they're also a little bit more interesting to interact with, and I think also a bit more interesting to actually just talk to. Like, for example, a character called Nemesis, who, the clue is in her name, she's your nemesis. She's a character that really just openly dislikes you, and not in like a kind of petty way, but like in a very deep-rooted, jealous, dark way. She really doesn't like you because she's jealous that you have been given this task to kill Kronos, and her task is basically just to guard the Crossroads from attacks that never ever come. So it's interesting seeing that style of writing, to be like, all right, this character really doesn't like me, and also how the psychology in my head works, because it made me really want to get to know this character more, because I was like, well, she doesn't like me. Why doesn't she like me? And I wanna learn more. And then there is another character called Odysseus, he kind of plays the Achilles role if you played the first game. So he's a planner and strategist, and gives you updates of what's happening around the underground as you progress. So he'll tell you, I saw that you died to this beast. Here are sometimes he gives you items to be like, here's some items to help you. Here's like a sacrifice, or not a sacrifice, like a gift to help you towards it. And he's just an interesting character to talk to, because if you know Greek mythology, you know Odysseus and all of his tales, and some of that mythology plays into the story too, which is really, really cool. And then finally, there is Hecate, who is your mentor and highest critic. Again, if you're watching the video, I'm currently fighting her on the video, which again, coincidence. But yeah, she is the head mistress of the witches sort of school or guild. I really like the writing behind her. I love the sort of balance between her encouraging you but questioning and challenging you at the same time, and that she never really holds your hand. Like, she basically says, I've given you all the tools you need, now you have to go out and perfect sharpen those tools and perfect your skills to actually achieve your your goal. And if you don't already know, sorry for the spoilers, but she's always the first boss that you fight in the game as well. I prefer these characters. They a bit like the story. They feel a bit more fleshed out in the the Crossroads, in the home base. I know Achilles, there was sort of some love story there with him, and in the first game. But the other one, I remember, what was her name? Dusa, the kind of the shade that looked like Medusa, right? But I don't really remember many of the other characters. What's he called? The sleep guy. He's also in this game. I've forgotten his name. Hypnos. He was also quite interesting. But again, there wasn't really much behind that sort of first level of like interest. It was just like, oh, these are cool, quirky characters. But in this game, there's way more depth to them, which is cool. And like with that game, it's sort of incredible how much dialogue there is in the game, because Sorry, I'm just switching screens. The game is very reactive to what you are doing. So if you die from a run or you win a run, when you go back to the Crossroads, these characters will react to what just happened. And it can be down to like sort of specific details where they'll say like, oh, you use this weapon against that boss and won, kind of thing. So it feels very particular and very like, you are really sort of influencing what is happening in the world, which is cool. And one of my favorite parts of the game is actually going back to the Crossroads and getting these updates, because it reminds me a little bit of Animal Crossing games where you check in every day with your neighbors and see what they've been getting up to, and that's how it feels when you return to the Crossroads. You're like, okay, I have to check in and see what's happening in the underworld, what's happening in the Crossroads, what's progressed, what reports does Odysseus have. And I think that's all down to the great writing behind these characters and many other characters in the game. I'm just focusing on the Crossroads. In addition, there is also a relationship building aspect to the game where you can give nectar, which is like a drink of the gods made out of golden apples, to characters to improve your relationship and learn more about them. And as you upgrade the Crossroads, you can also invite companions to do activities like relax in a hot spring, go fishing, or chill out in a taverna. The first game had this too, where you could give nectar to characters. But like I said, I didn't really get that invested in the first game, because I wasn't that invested in the characters. I mostly did it because when you first, and it's the same in this game, when you first gift the nectar, you always get a gift back, and those are your sort of emblems or your talismans that you can use in your runs that help you out in your runs. But in this game, I really was trying to max out specifically the characters in the Crossroad, max out all of their relationships, because I was just interested to hear what they had to say. I think my favourite character in the Crossroads is a new character called Lord Moros, who is Doom himself. And it's interesting learning about this character, who is the brother of the Fates, the three Fate sisters who weave the future. And also, it was interesting learning about how he feels being like the last thing mortals feels before they perish, because he is Doom. So when mortals meet their doom, he is there to meet them. So a very interesting spin on a character and an aspect, and again, great writing behind this character. It's like, how do you imagine how this character would feel? And they do a fantastic job doing that. Finally, the Crossroads gives you more to do between runs, and I would say it's debatable whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. I'm still a little bit unsure of it either way, but it is a change from the first game. Foremost, there is a huge witch's cauldron in the middle of the Crossroads, which you can use to create incantations and items that give permanent upgrades to you or your base. Mel herself, or to your run, sorry, I didn't finish that sentence. These are things like adding the rooms, so the taverna, the hot springs, and the, what was the final one? I can't remember what it was. The fishing. You have to kind of upgrade your base from this cauldron. But there are also sort of enchantments that when you collect enough items, you can unlock a specific. So, for example, there's like a different path in your trip to Kronos. I don't want to spoil it too much, but basically, you unlock a different path which you could take, which you can choose to take, and that's all done from your cauldron. And it's also a way that you can make enemies sort of permanently weaker too. So or add like shops to levels, or add healing fountains to levels. So it's very kind of granular down to like basically any upgrade you can imagine getting in the game. It's all done from this at least permanent upgrade. It's all done in this cauldron. And like with the amount of dialogue in the game, I'm also always surprised to see how much there is to upgrade, because it felt like I'm 25 hours in. Even now, going back sometimes from a run, it'll be like a little exclamation mark above the cauldron, like, oh, you can unlock something else now. Here's a new thing that you can try to work towards. And it's, again, I don't know if that's good or bad. It's like it does feel like, you know how like 20 years ago, before roguelikes were a thing, like these upgrades would just be in the game from the start and would help you along. And I know that's not the point. I guess maybe more the comparison would be like in in games where you have skins, where in most games 20 years ago the skins would be there to unlock as you go along, and now you can just buy them quickly. It kind of feels a bit like that, where it's like, okay, there's literally anything that could give you a little bit of help, they've put it in this cauldron now, rather than just being like, oh, here you go, it's in the game, here is a shop, or a shop between levels, or a fountain between levels, or whatever. And another thing that, why I can't decide if it's a good thing or a bad thing, is the amount of materials and items you get. So it, like, you get so many different materials that you sort of don't really know what they're for or what to do with them. And I guess like every roguelike has items that, you know, only last you a run. So in this game, it's like your boons and your gold, and that perishes when you perish in the game, or when you beat the run. But Hades 2 has dozens of items like that that are persistent ones, so that you need them to continuously upgrade the Crossroads or upgrade Mel. And and like I said, 25 hours into the game, you're still getting introduced to new materials that you need, where you're like, what on earth is this for? Like, I have already 100 different materials that I've got from wherever. What is this new rock, and what do I use it for? And it just feels very overwhelming. And also they've added this new farming mechanic to the game, which in sort of principle, it's fun. Like, oh yeah, you have this farm and you get these seeds and you plant the seeds in the farm, and then it takes the sort of duration it takes for the plants to grow is how many rooms you do in a run. So if it's a quick plant, you might only need to do five rooms, and it'll be the plant will have grown, and then when you go back to the Crossroads, you can harvest it. But there are some plants that are rarer that maybe take 60 rooms. So if you have a really short run, you might return and it still is growing, kind of thing. And yeah, it feels a little bit what we'll talk about later with some of the other new things that they added. It feels a bit like, well, the industry is going towards farming games, and let's put one in just to be like, well, we have a farming mechanic in our game, but it's not really like a farming mechanic that you would think of for, I don't know, Stardew Valley. Again, it feels very sort of Animal Crossing in a way, where it's like, okay, I'm going to plant my seed here and water it, and then tomorrow I'll come back and hopefully it's grown into a flower. It's nice, but it just adds more clutter to the game, more things for you to think about with, well, okay, I need a garlic, but how do I get a garlic? I have to find a garlic seed. Okay, where do I find the garlic, or a garlic clover, I guess. Where do I find the garlic clover? It's in this specific location. Okay, well, you know, then I go to that specific location, then I can't find any holes in the ground where I can dig up the garlic clove, and you're like, okay, now I'm sort of stuck in the game because I need this garlic to progress and unlock the next level that I have to unlock from the cauldron. So yeah, it just adds a lot of busy work and a lot of more sort of micromanaging to the game, and also not necessarily knowing what you need to focus on to progress, because there might be 20 different things in the cauldron that you can upgrade or need to be upgraded, but you're like, well, which one of these is going to help me out now? Like, I'm stuck on this particular boss or this particular enemy. Which one of these do I need to focus on to unlock to actually get me the next step and get me to the next boss, or get me to beat Kronos? And that just feels very frustrating, because you're like, well, I'm going to try and find this and try to find that, and you can mark like, these are the materials I need to find in your game. So when it shows you in the levels like 2 doors you can always choose from, there'll be like a little marker that says, okay, if you go in this room, the material you need will be in there. But still, it does feel a little bit of like, a block to your progression. And also, I think the game is a lot harder than the original game. Like, it took me way longer to get to Kronos than it took me to get to Hades in the first game, and also then it took me way longer to beat Kronos than it did to beat Hades in the first game. So this sort of feeling of like, well, I'm stuck and I'm not making any progress whatsoever, and I could upgrade 20 different things, but I don't really know what I should upgrade to help me progress is just a little bit frustrating at times. But yeah, but combat, like I'm not going to focus too much on combat. Like if you've played the first game, it's very similar to the original, but has been leveled up by these new moves called Omega moves, or this Omega move system, and you have a new and improved cast. So in the first game, your cast was basically just a shot that did a homing projectile, and it would hit an enemy and do a little bit of damage. And I remember even playing Hades back in the day, like thinking, okay, this just feels like a bit of an afterthought. They were like, well, what can A do? The A button does, oh, let's just put something on it where you fire a weapon and it hits an enemy, and that'll do for now. And yeah, it just kind of did something. But in Hades 2, now when you press the A button, it produces a circular cast on the floor that basically traps enemies in it and holds them in place for a certain amount of time. And if you hold down A, your cast will become an Omega cast, which is a stronger version of the irregular cast, and does more damage to your enemies, but it costs you mana, which is also a new thing in the game, which is a massive new sort of feature of the game. In fact, your attack and special also have Omega moves that cost mana too. Therefore, now you are not just balancing how much health you have, but also how much mana you have, because the more mana, the more Omega moves you can use. And at first, I actually tended to ignore the Omega moves, because I was like, well, why would I use them? Like, I basically got all the way through the first Hades without needing the Omega moves because they weren't in the game. Why can't I get through this game without them too? And the main reason is that I think that your nocturnal arms, which are the weapons that you use, their specials have a range attack or a range Omega move that is usually on your special, and it comes in very handy when fighting some of the tougher bosses. And once I embraced the fact that Supergiant obviously put the Omega cast and the Omega moves into the game for you to use, I started getting further and further in my runs and eventually beat Kronos. And the combat in Hades 2, it feels amazing. It's fast, very twitchy, very addictive. And in my head, I thought that it felt the same as Hades, actually. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to the original game and play that myself and just see if there was a difference. And of course, there certainly was a difference. Hades 2 feels way more refined and fluid than the original, with the original's attacks almost feeling crude compared to the perfect strikes of Mel's weapons. In addition, the rhythm of the combat feels a little bit different in Hades 2. So I always think Hades, it feels a little bit like not necessarily a fighting game, but you do have that sort of pattern of, okay, combo, hit, dash away, hit, special, whatever. And I felt like in the first game, that rhythm was way more focused on dashing. Like you were basically just dashing around, dashing, hitting, dashing away, dashing back in, hitting, striking a couple of enemies and dashing away. And in Hades 2, I think the dash is way less important, and instead you're just trying to catch your enemies in your cast and then either get in close with your weapon to finish them or pick them off with your special. So it's way more like you don't dash as much. There's actually a sprint in the game now, so you hold down B and that lets you sprint. I found myself using the sprint way more often than the dash. And I think it's also very telling that you can't actually. So in the Mirror of Night in Hades, the thing that you use to upgrade Zagreus, you could add more dashes. So I think you could get up to like 5 dashes in a row if you wanted to. There's nothing like that in this game. Like you can get a boon from Hermes that gives you more dashes, but that's just for the run. So I think it just shows, there's definitely more of a focus on use the cast, trap the enemies, and then try to do as much damage to the enemies as possible that are stuck in your cast, rather than get in, do a hit, get out, get back in, do another hit. And like I said, it took a while to get used to, like maybe an hour or two. Like I was at the start, I was like, oof, I'm struggling, I can't get through the first location, because it just felt very different. Like there are these ghouls that look like women, and they fire like a sonar out at you in like a cone, and every time I come up against them, they just kill me, because I was like, I can't dash away. Why can't I dash away from them? But yeah, it's because what the designers wanted is for me to trap them in a cast and then beat them that way. And yeah, what we've already talked about a little bit is the difficulty of the combat, and it's not necessarily confirmed in the game or stated anywhere that it is more difficult. But from playing 35 hours of the first game and then playing 25 of this, I'm almost certain it is harder. Like I've already said, it took me way longer to get to Kronos than it did for me to get to Hades. And there's another 2 bosses, I would say, that are even harder than Kronos, which at the time of recording, I beat one and then got to the other one, and then the other one beat me. So I've not beat that boss. I think that boss is considered the final boss in the game. And I don't know what happens because I've never beat him, but it is really hard, and getting there is really hard. And so be ready for a challenge when you boot up the game. It is difficult. Like it looks, like it's a very pretty game, and it's very sort of it has these sexy characters and this nice art style and whatever, and it's story based, but it's still a difficult game. Like don't hold that against it. That just because it might not necessarily look like a roguelike should, it still is a roguelike, and it's still very difficult at times. And I think the difficulty and the lack of direction on what you should upgrade leads to parts of the game feeling a little bit grindy. So this is what I was talking about before. And I kept basically having the same experience, specifically with these bosses. Like, so when I would, at first before I beat Kronos, I would get through all of the levels to the Kronos fight more or less unscathed. Like, would just go through, have full health, have full Death Defiance, which is the thing that gives you lets you come back to life if you die, and then just get to him and just get absolutely pummeled. And it was the same going to the other bosses, where I would go through, waltz through all of the levels beforehand, and then get to those bosses, and they would just absolutely smash me. And like I said, it got a bit frustrating because I didn't necessarily know what I was supposed to be upgrading at the time to help beat me. In the end, I would say it was a change up in strategy. Actually, it was using the Omega moves, using the distance more, getting used to using the cast that eventually helped me beat Kronos. But yeah, this loop probably went on for like 5 hours, where I was just grinding and like, okay, I'm going to grind for this item called bones, which lets you buy things from the shop. And then there are certain things you can buy from the shop that let you upgrade Melenoway, which we'll talk about in a second. And then I was using that to upgrade her to get as many stats as I could to then help me finish. But in the end, I still think it was more the change up in strategy than stats. And those things, again, if you're watching the video, it's quite good timing. Those are the Arcana cards. So these are another new addition to the game, and they replace Zagreus' Mirror of the Night for upgrading your powers and stats. And the cards have to be unlocked at the Altar of Ashes with, ashes that can be equipped, and the cards can then be equipped for a run. Arcana cards have powers like restoring a little bit of health whenever you leave a room, or they can improve the rarity of boons granted to you by a god. And Mel can only equip so many of them at a time, because each one has a cost. And it basically fits within this thing called a grass limit, which is like, she has 10 that she can use, and I don't know, 5 cards cost two each. So then you can equip 5 of them. So there is like a limit on how many you can equip. There's also sort of like a deck building aspect to it, where some cards will cost 0 grasp, and but there is sort of a, I don't know what's the word, like there is a, what's the word? I can't think of the word. I'm getting distracted by watching my own gameplay of the game. But basically there is like a what is the word? Basically they won't work until you've hit this certain request. So some of it might be like, this card will only apply if you unlock all of the cards surrounding it, things like that. So so it also gets into a little bit of also like deck builder-ish, but not quite. And I think, in all honesty, I prefer the Mirror of the Night from the first game over the Altar of Ashes, because although I think the Altar of Ashes and the Arcana cards, the art on them looks gorgeous, I felt like I had way more control over my stats in the Mirror of Night, because that was literally just like toggling stuff on or off, and being like, all right, I want to put more stats into speed or dashes or Death Defiance, and reduce the stats in health, because I'm like, well, I don't need that much health. I'm not getting hit that often or whatever. And it was another thing where, a bit like with the farm, where I feel the cards felt a little bit shoehorned in, where they were like, okay, card games are popular at the minute. Let's just add a mechanic that sort of looks, or it looks like a card game, but doesn't. That's it. It doesn't really play like a card game, other than you have like mana costs for the cards. And I don't really pay that much attention to the cards I've selected on a run. I think the most important one you can get is the Death card, which grants you up to 3 Death Defiances, which bring you back to life if you die. And you can have 6 pre-save builds if you want. So there is obviously like room to build certain decks for certain builds of your character, but maybe that comes later on in the game, like when you're in the very like end game and you're just doing challenge runs over and over, and you really want to fine tune like a specific aspect of your character. So like maybe you want to make it so that every boon you get is a legendary boon or a heroic one, and maybe you can tweak the cards like that to make sure that you do it. I didn't get that into them. I basically was like, okay, what is the most amount of cards I can get for the grasp that Millennium has, and I didn't really look into like if the cards would pair well with the weapon I was using at the time. I was just like, okay, how many cards can I have active at once, and that seemed to work fine for me. But I think if you are into a bit more like min-maxing, there is an opportunity to do that. Next up, I want to talk about the art, and it's one of the favorite things of mine about the original Hades. In fact, I love the art in all of Supergiant's games. There's just something very unique about Gen Z's style. It's like a wonderful mix of Art Nouveau, but mixed in with sort of an angsty gothic flourish. I really like the dark outlines of the characters contrast well with the bright cartoony colors, and of course, every character in both Hades games look sexy as F. But much like the combat at first glance, I didn't think Hades 2 looked that different from Hades. I was like, yeah, this is a Hades game. Like, this is a Gen Z game. It looks good. Like, the characters look great. It just looks the same as the original game. But yes, I couldn't be more wrong. Like I said, I went back and played the original, and honestly, and I don't mean this in a bad, like, I mean, I guess it is bad, but I love Hades and I love the art, but comparing the two now, playing the original game almost felt like the prototype for this game, because the Hades 2 game, the big thing with the art is that everything has been remade in 3D. The original game was only in 2D, so now they're using 3D assets rather than just 2D sprites, which I actually didn't know until I researched a little bit. And it makes a big difference because the game just looks way nicer. It looks way more fluid. Obviously the game runs at 60 FPS on the Switch 2, whereas the original game was I think locked at 30. So it feels a lot buttery smooth and way more fluid than the original. So yeah, it's a big difference. Like, it looks way nicer. Like if you, I don't know, like if you have both games, do go back and play Hades, because you will see the difference. Like, you might not think it at the start, but go back and play it because there is a massive difference. One criticism though I do have of the art in this game is that sometimes it might be a bit too stylish for its own good. So in combat, it can be quite hard to see what is flying towards you because there is so much detail in some of the rooms. And it's strange because in Hades, so if say you were behind a wall during a fight, the wall would go transparent, and then you'd still be able to see what you were doing. In this game, that's not the case. So there might be obstacles or traps or an enemy, and you're behind it, and you can't really see what's happening. So therefore, you can't see projectiles coming towards you, and it meant that like I really couldn't count the amount of times that I just got hit and was like, oh, I didn't see that. Like that would have been nice to see, because it just gets drowned in the background, the detail. Like, there's so much detail in the game, and like I said, like there's a lot of like big thick black lines, which I think help kind of make it look a bit messy at times. And if you have small tiny projectiles flying towards you, or an enemy that's quite small coming towards you, you will get hit and not really realize why you've been hit. And I couldn't really count the number of times that I had been hit and not known where it had come from, or dashed and not known where I am. So maybe for combat's and clarity's sake, they could have toned down the detail a little bit in some of the rooms. But where I am glad they didn't tone it down was the portraits of the gods. So each of the gods' portraits has been redrawn. Even gods from the previous game, they've completely redrawn the portraits. They look amazing. Again, in the first game, they looked very sort of like Tim Burton-ish. Like very dark lines, like very emo, but it still looked good, but very, just like dark and a bit like like they didn't have like enough contrast. Like they felt the colors the colors of the gods felt very washed out. In this game, they look gorgeous. Like again at the start, I was like, whatever, they look the same. Yeah, they added some nice backgrounds to them, to the god portraits, but the gods just look the same. They don't. Again, they look way better, way just brighter, more interesting to look at. They're just easier to look at, and they look gorgeous. They have like a nice sort of highlight sweep over the metallic parts that gives it sort of like goldish, metallic-ish highlight sweep to them, which looks really cool. And yeah, it's great because there is way more characters detail to these characters, to their facial expressions. Like they have more poses that they use, and it also I think reflects the voice acting better, which helped me get more invested into the story. And speaking of voice acting, as always, Supergiant Games have like top tier voice acting talent, and it's no different here. Judy Alice Lee, who plays Melenue, does an excellent job of voicing the protagonist, who at the start of the game I didn't like that much. However, through Judy's portrayal, Melenue becomes less stiff and cold as the story progresses, giving her a human side and making her a more likable character. And in addition, even though I did really like Darren Korb as the voice of Zagreus in the first game, I do think you can tell the difference in the depth of emotional portrayals in Melanie, because it is like a professional actress playing her rather than Zagreus. Like again, looking back, Zagreus is very one tone, very kind of smirky. He's a smart ass. He's quite posh. Whereas and that's it more or less. Whereas in this game, Melenue has this wide contrast of emotions, which I think when you have a professional voice actress doing that, or voice actor, you can tell the difference to someone who is just sort of doing it because they enjoy it. Looking at the IMDb for the game, it's so cool to see how many different voice actors there are in the game. And some of my personal highlights are Ben Starr, who is the voice of Final Fantasy 16. He's the voice of Clive, I should say, in Final Fantasy 16. He appears as one of the bosses that I won't spoil here. And of course, Logan Cunningham, a Supergiant staple, who plays multiple characters in the game, including Kronos, Homer. I think Kronos, Homer, who is the narrator of the game, and Odysseus. And again, if you listen to those three voices next to each other, I think you would never guess it's the same person doing those voices. They're so good, so different. He's a great actor. And the music, so the soundtrack of Hades, so the original one, is definitely my most listened to video game soundtrack ever. It's actually the soundtrack that got me into listening to video game soundtracks. I never really considered video game music like music that I would listen to outside of a video game till I played Hades, because when I was playing Hades, I started a new job in an office, and it was the first time I'd worked in an office. And I was like, okay, I want to listen to something, but I'm typing all day long, or I'm writing documentation or whatever. I can't have music with like singing in it, because it'll just distract me. So I was like, okay, then I'll just play the soundtrack, because I was playing the game at the same time, and was like, this is perfect, because it is a fantastic soundtrack. And I do think Hades 2 soundtrack is great, but unlike the combat and art of the game, it does feel very much like more of the same from Hades. The tracks are obviously sort of inspired by the original ones and build off of the original game's tracks, which makes them kind of the new tracks get a little bit lost. Like it's hard for me to tell really which tracks are new and which tracks are old, because they do sound very similar. That being said, there are some areas later on in the game where it's obvious that this is like a new track, but it also feels, in my opinion, a little bit like that track doesn't really belong in the game. Like it feels, the track I'm thinking of, it feels like it's from a Marvel movie or a Star Wars movie rather than Hades. It was a little bit hard for them the new tracks to stand out from the old ones, because again they kind of like building off of the old ones a lot and sound very similar. The one track that does stand out though is the Siren song that plays during the Skilla boss fight. So this is like a proper voiced produced song, basically. I wouldn't say it's a track, it's like a song where they actually sing in it, and it sounds great. But I think the only reason that I can like re-sing this song to you is because it's a boss fight, so you're fighting them over and over and over again, so the lyrics just get kind of ingrained on your brain. And I just want to be clear, don't get me wrong, the music in Hades 2 is still great. Like it's still a fantastic sounding game, from the tracks, from the sound effects, from like we already talked about the voice acting, from whatever. There's like a part in the Crossroads where Artemis comes and her and Millennium just sing a song together. It sounds beautiful, but it won't quite leave the same impression on me, or hasn't left the same impression on me as the soundtrack from the first game did. So yeah, so before I want to get into the conclusion, I just want to explain a little bit why I focused on what I did during the review. Is because I didn't want to go completely into what the game is like, because it is building off Hades 2, and there is a lot of it's building off the original Hades, and there is a lot of the original Hades in this game. Like I said, the combat is mostly the same. The loop is mostly like you're still meeting gods and getting boons from them. So yeah, if you're wondering why I didn't mention that, it's because it's like, if you've played Hades, you know what this is. I didn't want to get bogged down in that too much when it's already kind of obvious if you've played the Hades games. If you are interested in maybe you are new to the Hades series and you've never played Hades 1 and you're looking to get into Hades 2, I would suggest going to my Hades 1 review on Patreon. You can go on it, it's free to view and everything, and read through that, because there I do go into more depth into actually the mechanics of the game, whereas in this review I wanted to focus mostly on what's new, what's different, what's the same compared to the two games, and which I liked more. So that's kind of why I focus on those. But that does lead us to the question, should you buy Hades 2? And at first glance, Hades 2 might not look like it has changed that much from the original game. It is the same soap opera about a dysfunctional family of gods from Greek mythology. The combat and art look similar to the original, and the loop of entering the underworld, dying, and slowly powering yourself up is also the same as Hades. However, after playing the game for over 25 hours, it is indeed very different to the original. Hades 2's story feels more impactful than the first game. The introduction of Kronos and his cronies makes the story more titanic, pun intended, compared to the teenage angst of Hades' story. The switch from 2D art assets to 3D makes Gen Z's art shine even more than it did in the first game, and with 60 FPS on the Nintendo Switch 2, its animations are smooth as butter, making the game the original game almost feel like a prototype compared to this one. Furthermore, the addition of the new cast system and Omega moves add a new level to the combat, perfecting it and making it even more addictive than that of the first game. Then why do I not think this game is a 10 out of 10 when I gave the original a perfect score? Well, much like why I personally prefer Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom, it's the same argument that can be made here. Hades had to walk so that Hades 2 could run. Yes, Hades 2 is an improvement on the first game, but without the original it would not be as good as it is. Plus, there are some pacing issues that I had with the game that cause it to have some grindy sections due to lack of direction, and the amount of items in the game is staggering and confusing. Nevertheless, Hades 2 is a must-play game, especially if you're into narrative-driven games or into roguelites. I'm certain it will be high up on my 2025 Game of the Year list, and I cannot wait to see what Supergiant's next project will be. So guys, that was my review of Hades 2. Yeah, I'm very interested to see what they'll work on next. I know they've just released this game and you're like, all right, let them breathe. They've just released like another masterpiece, like, whatever. They can do whatever they want next. But because I think after this game, I haven't finished the game. Like I said, I'm still stuck on one of the bosses, and I still need to beat Kronos a couple of more times, I think, to actually be like, okay, this is the end. But I can't imagine it's going to be another Hades game. I think they will pivot to something new. And I really hope for Supergiant that they don't sort of, they don't try to scale up where they're like, all right, well, one team will work on a Hades game and then we'll just have another team do something else. Like, I think if you've ever not watched the no-clip the no-clip documentary about the first game, it's absolutely fascinating. Like, if you have any interest in game development, watch it, because it really goes through the entire process that they had of, creating, talking about Pyre, which was the game before Hades, that was a bit of a commercial flop, and then working into Hades, and then about the early access, and then going through early access, and then releasing it on the Switch, and then seeing the success it had on the Switch. It's a fascinating series about a fascinating game, so I do highly suggest that you watch it. And I think that's the thing that makes Supergiant so special, is like, it seems like when they work on a game, the whole team is invested on that game. So I really hope that, whatever they do next, if it's not Hades, the entire team works on it, or if it is a Hades game, it's the entire team works on it. I think if it is another Hades game, I think they do need to change quite a lot. Like I said, Hades 2 feels like a perfection of the original game. So where do you go from perfecting basically perfect in my book. I don't know if you can. Like, I think it's going to be very hard to perfect Hades 2, unless you change something about it. Like, I don't know, like it's some kind of spin-off, or they do something a bit more interesting with the roguelite aspect. Like, they could make it more roguelike, or roguelite, I should say. Because there are, I mean, I guess I should have maybe mentioned this before. Like, it kind of falls into that grindiness feeling. Like, the bosses are always the same bosses in the game, so it's never like you get to the end of World 1 and it could be one of 4 random bosses, like it might be in The Binding of Isaac, for example. It's always the same boss, and it feels like in this game it's even less like randomized to what the boss does. So there are some times where the boss will have different moves. But in the original game, the first boss you fought was Megaera, who was one of the Furies, and then it would randomize which Fury you were going to fight. Like, that doesn't really happen in the game, or hasn't happened yet. Like I said, I'm 25 hours in, so I feel like if it was going to happen, it would have. So I think they could make the roguelite aspect a bit more randomized, a bit more like fresh feeling, like because I think that does make it feel a little bit samey sometimes when we're playing. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do next, and I mean, it doesn't really matter because I'll play whatever they're going to play. They're going to release next. The black mark I have on their kind of portfolio is Pyre. I never played Pyre. I should play it. It's I think it's only came out on the PlayStation, and I think they just sort of were like, well, it just flopped there, so we're not going to try and put it anywhere else. And interestingly, they brought Bastion and Transistor over to the Switch too, but we're like, yeah, Pyre, we're sorry. Maybe there's some exclusivity stuff with PlayStation, but John from Gaming in the Wild, he's always shouting from the rooftops about Pyre, that it's one of the best, or if not the best, Supergiant game in his opinion, so I should definitely go and check it out. But yeah, thanks guys for listening to watching episode 77 of the Beat Your Backlog podcast. Let me know what you think the Supergiant will work on next. Also, let me know if you've been playing Hades 2. How far did you get? Is it going to be on your Game of the Year list? And do you think it's better than the original? If you're a Spotify, Patreon, or YouTube listener, let me know by commenting on the episode. And if you're listening elsewhere, let me know on Blue Sky. Just search for Beat Your Backlog or join our Discord. The link is in the description. Also, I am doing something very new for me, at least on my YouTube, where I have made a proper, in quotation marks, Hades 2 review video on there. So basically, I took my script from this episode, rewrote it so it was a little bit punchier and faster to read, and then made a video where I read the script aloud, put gameplay on the video, kind of produced it, edited it, tried to make it as nice as I could, and that video will be going up on YouTube. So I know you've just listened to nearly 50 minutes of me talking about Hades 2, but if you could please go over to the video and give it a click and give it a like, because I hope this video does well, because I put a lot of effort into it. I'm also thinking like my next Patreon video or episode might just be about me telling you how I made this video, because it's quite a story. Like if you don't have a capture card or you're not playing on PC, it can be quite a pain to take gameplay videos from Nintendo Switch 2 and make a full 7 or 8 minute video out of them. But yeah, I'll save that for the Patreon exclusive episode. Speaking of Patreon, if you are interested in listening to that episode, or you've enjoyed this episode and would like to show your support, consider joining my Patreon at the $2 or $5 tier. If you do, you will get access to all of my content 24 hours before everyone else, and get access to my Patreon exclusive podcast, Beat Your Bonus. And if you're in the mood to listen to more Nintendo Switch 2 content, check out my episodes on Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World. And finally, Beat Your Backlog needs your support. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider subscribing and or following wherever you were listening, and leaving us a 5-star review. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.